Can Starbucks save the middle class? It's a question that journalist Amanda Ripley considers in our May cover story, which describes the novel partnership that gives Starbucks baristas a deep discount on online classes through Arizona State University. People like Alicia Thomas, who's enrolled in the program.
If I was in school in person, I'd probably be in tons of debt. Some adults who don't think that deeply don't understand why between ages of 20 and 27 you can't afford to get your own place, or why it's taking people 6 years to graduate from school. It's too expensive. I can't afford all the classes at once. I can't afford the books. I can't afford the gas to get back and forth to class. Okay, now I can pay for the schooling, but I can't pay for my housing. Or now I can pay for my housing, but I have no way to get back and forth to school, and the bus systems around here suck. So what am I supposed to do? And I was at a point this year in my life where I just wanted to break down because I was working really hard and studying really hard. And where's the reward? Why am I still at the end of the month with $5 left in my bank account? Where's the reward? So the CAP program really helped me. And I only ended up paying $773 out of pocket for the semester. I feel like I'm winning. I took out a loan for that, but $800? I could pay that off in a couple months. It makes our total pay package much better, which is why people are willing to stay at Starbucks for $9.05 an hour as a barista, because you're telling me you're gonna give me $30,000? Okay, I'll make drinks and I'll clean toilets because I find value in being educated. My grandfather was a college professor. My father's a teacher. My aunt's a principal. My sister's a preschool aide. Education is just something that's been grounded in me for so long. How could I not get it? And every day when I don't have to pay student loans every month like my other friends, that's why waking up at 4 a.m. is okay with me, because I'm getting a free education.
Amanda Ripley is here to tell the story of how Alicia and other baristas are putting themselves through college.
Thank you. So I got to spend a lot of time with Alicia and half a dozen other baristas around the country, and it was this really eye-opening experience to glimpse a much bigger national mystery. We now have 35 million Americans who have some college credit, but no degree. And it's not for lack of trying, which is important to note. Alicia, who you just saw, she enrolled in 2 different colleges, the University of California in Los Angeles, as well as Riverside City College. What you find is that the central challenge for most Americans today is not starting college, it's finishing it. And so the question is, what can be done to help students who could finish college finish? Now you might say, well, college isn't for everyone, right? I'm sure that's true. The reality is, based on our economy, it's for far more people than we are currently graduating. So the question is, what can be done? 2 summers ago, the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, met up with the president of Arizona State University, Michael Crow, in Aspen, Colorado. They were there for a foundation meeting about how to improve social mobility in the United States. They ended up sort of holing up in a corner and just venting their frustrations with each other and scheming, trying to figure out how could they change this? How could they improve social mobility on their own beyond, commission reports and recommendations? There were lots of reasons why they were both interested in this, including some very obvious business reasons. Starbucks has a strong incentive to attract and retain the most ambitious, organized workers that they can. They also have an incentive to try to convince their customers that they are about something bigger than dispensing caffeine and sugar. In addition, and I think this is important, they had a personal interest in this. So Howard Schultz grew up in public housing in Brooklyn, not far from here, and neither of his parents graduated from high school. He was the first to graduate from college in his family, and he made $20 million last year. So he used education, right, as a kind of rope ladder to the American dream, and it was just disturbing to him that it is now easier to do that in Canada than it is in the United States. Meanwhile, Michael Crow at Arizona State, he also came from very modest means. His mother died when he was 9, and he traveled around the country with his father, who was in the Navy, attending 17 different schools before finally graduating from high school. Some of his siblings never did graduate from high school. So for him as well, he was frustrated with the pace of change among other colleges and other institutions in the US. He'd worked hard at Arizona State for the past 10 years to make it more economically diverse, but the pace of change is slow. So what could they do to help Alicia and more people like her finish college? Well, they spent a year trying to figure it out with the help of their employees, and they came up with a new program which launched in the fall, and they did two main things. The first thing they did to try to improve college completion was to make it cheaper, right? That's a pretty obvious one. So they did that. That turns out to be very important and not as complex as the second thing. The second thing they did is to try to make the college experience less terrible. This turns out to matter a lot. So one of the reasons, the best predictor right now of who will graduate from college in this country, the best predictor is not your race or your age or even your academic ability. The best predictor is your parents' pay grade. And that's a shameful situation, right? One of the reasons, the research shows, one of the reasons more affluent kids are more likely to finish college is that they have all this invisible support from the day they're born, helping them through the rough patches, urging them on. When you don't have that support, when in fact you might have people around you who are telling you that college is a waste of money and that you're really not college material so much, those voices get in your head, just like the supportive voices do. So the question was, could they recreate some of that support particularly for first-generation college students? So if you work at Starbucks part-time or full-time and you express interest in this program, you get a sort of pit crew of support staff, all of them working remotely for various vendors, but you think they all work for Arizona State, of course, but they work for various vendors. And what happens is you get an enrollment coach who helps walk you through the application process, and then you get an academic advisor and a financial aid advisor and a success coach who kind of keeps in touch with you by text and email and phone to make sure everything's good and be there when things go wrong, as they always do. In Alicia's case, the woman in the video, when she expressed interest in learning more about the Starbucks College program and clicked on that button on the website, she got a call from a woman named Nikki, who was working in Phoenix, Arizona for Xerox. But again, as far as Alicia knows, she's working for Arizona State. And Nikki's whole job is to help students enroll at Arizona State. But some very interesting things happened then. And when you ask any of these baristas that I interviewed about this process, their face lights up. Like, it's kind of amazing how grateful they are for what is actually not an extravagant level of service. But in Alicia's case, she said Nikki answered her questions about what would happen if she went to Arizona State. Would she be able to walk across the stage to get her diploma even though her classes would be online? And Nikki was able to tell her yes. Nikki listened to her questions and answered her as if she had all the time in the world. Alicia, remember, like these other baristas, spends all day making custom coffee drinks for people, right? One of the amazing things about this story is I found out just how much some people ask of their barista. Like, it's actually amazing. But she'll do things like, probably half the drinks she makes are not on the menu, right? They're things people have invented or found online or whatever. And, she'll do things like routinely make a, grande, extra foam, skinny latte with 12 packets of Splenda, which Alicia has to pour into the cup herself while there's a ding in her headset because more cars are coming in through the drive-thru. So this is the level of service that Starbucks gives you in exchange for your $5 or $6, right? But get one email from an enrollment counselor reminding you to get your transcripts in, and the baristas are like, oh my God, this is so great. I don't feel alone. And that's what they all said, is they didn't feel alone. So it's actually not a very expensive level of service, but what it reveals is how low the level of service was at their previous colleges, right? So when I asked Alicia, well, how did your enrollment experience with Nikki compare to your enrollment experience at your previous 2 colleges? She said, what enrollment experience? So this is really important, because what happened next? Well, Alicia's transcripts got lost. And Alicia started worrying, again, a very common problem for students today. And she was panicking, oh my gosh, they're not going to be there on time. And she insisted to Nikki that she had done everything she was supposed to do to send them. So Nikki believed her and went off and found them at Arizona State. They'd been misplaced. This meant the world to Alicia. And then, right when classes were about to begin, Alicia's laptop got stolen. And she was so devastated, because how could she be an online student without a computer, right? So she was really upset and discouraged, and she did something important, which is she reached out to her counselor and she said, I have to drop out of the orientation class for Starbucks students because I don't have a computer. And her counselor said, I'm sorry that happened. I'm going to sign you up for the next orientation class, which starts in a week, and gave her some ideas about how she could maybe get online in the meantime. And with just a little bit of wind at her back, Alicia got creative. And that's when she started taking her classes on her iPhone. So she would finish her shift at Starbucks and go to another Starbucks to study. She's the only barista I met who actually studied at other Starbucks. But she would go and she would read her readings and then tap out her discussion posts. Sometimes she'd go to Applebee's and get a margarita and spend hours on her phone doing this. And she found that she could do it. The only thing she couldn't do was take tests, because you needed a webcam, because you're being creepily remotely monitored to make sure you're not cheating. So for those cases, she would borrow a computer from a relative. So the reason I tell this story is because what the research shows is that with just a little bit of support, not a huge amount, students can be extremely resilient, extremely creative, but they need a little bit of support. The kind that affluent kids get as a matter of course. So what happened? Well, Alicia finished the first semester with straight A's on her iPhone and re-enrolled for the next semester. It's still early days for the Starbucks program overall, but there is some good news and some bad news. The good news is that 87% of the Starbucks students re-enrolled for the next semester, which is actually a very good re-enrollment rate for online learning in general. And of all the classes they took, they passed 79% of them, which is about the same as for Arizona State Online overall. And it was good for Starbucks. 20,000 people applied for jobs at Starbucks and cited the college benefit as one of their primary reasons. But at the same time, their biggest failure was that only 1,000 Starbucks employees were enrolled that first semester. That's 1% of Starbucks' US workforce. Much less than they had anticipated. So now, there are different ways to handle this. You could just say, well, I guess people are lazy and they don't want to go to college. Or you could say, I wonder why. Maybe we should ask them. Which is what Starbucks did, to their credit. So they did a representative survey of people who had expressed interest in the program online but not finished the application. And they found that there were really specific reasons. One thing was that if you didn't have 2 years of credits already, you had to pay some money on your own, out of pocket. And that barrier, even though it was a discounted tuition rate, was still too much. Not only financially, but psychologically. Another thing they found is that there was just a huge amount of anxiety among their employees about college. So they really had to do much more work than they had expected to convince them that this was real, that it was affordable, and that they could do it. So they got rid of the financial barrier altogether, and in March they started offering a full free ride to all part-time or full-time employees, regardless of how many credits you had, which was important not just financially, but also to build trust with their employees. And the other thing they did is they realized that this coaching and support was really important. So they amped it up and started offering even more of that kind of thing to their employees, again, helping to build trust and deal with some of the fraught experiences people have had with college in the past and all of the uncertainty that they have in their current lives, where they mostly work full-time, some of them have children, lots of obligations, and not a lot of buffer. So the sort of bottom line for me from all of this so far is not that, Starbucks is a wondrous beneficent ruler, and we all should be grateful, but that, this is possible. So if it is possible for companies to get very focused, not just on reimbursing tuition, but on making sure students finish, making sure their employees' experience is meaningful and that there are results. If more colleges felt that pressure from companies and from taxpayers, couldn't they also pivot the way Arizona State did and change what they were doing very quickly to respond to students' needs? I certainly think that nothing they were doing was unique to Starbucks or Arizona State. So then the question is, will they be the only ones doing it 5 years from now? And will we have another 5 million people who have started college and never finished? Thank you very much. So honored to be here.